Today, we are going to talk about one of the most incredible stories in human history. It's a story about a people who, with some truly revolutionary tech and a deep, deep connection to the sea, managed to populate half the planet. This is the amazing story of the Austronesians. All right, so let's just jump right in with a question that seems simple but is actually a giant globe-spanning puzzle. Picture a map. You've got Madagascar, way over there off the coast of Africa, and then you have Hawaii, smack in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. I mean, they're separated by more than 16,000 kilometers of open water. So how on earth could people from these two places possibly be related? Well, the answer is just mind-blowing. They are both part of the Austronesian family. Before the age of European colonization, this was the single most widespread language family on the entire planet. And that's all thanks to a seaborne expansion that settled island after island across two massive oceans. This wasn't some historical accident. It was one of the greatest achievements of exploration in human history. So here's how we're going to break down this incredible journey. We'll start with the mystery of this global family. Then we'll go all the way back to their origins in Taiwan. We'll look at the amazing ocean-going tech they developed, follow the literal trail of their pottery, and then witness their arrival at the most remote corners of the planet, before we wrap up by talking about the legacy they've left behind. You know, every epic journey has to start somewhere. For the Austronesians, that beginning wasn't some huge continent, but a small island, an island that would become the launchpad for one of humanity's greatest adventures. So the most widely accepted idea for how this all happened is called the Out of Taiwan model. The story really kicks off about 8,000 years ago, when farmers growing rice and millet crossed the strait from mainland China over to Taiwan. Now, for the next 2,000 years, their culture and their language basically evolved on this island, becoming what we now call Proto-Austronesian. Then, as their population grew, they started looking south. Around 3000 BCE, the first wave of migrants left Taiwan, reaching the Philippines and setting the stage for an expansion that would go on for thousands of years. So how did they pull this off? I mean, really, how did they do it? Well, they didn't just hop in a canoe and hope for the best. They carried with them a kind of portable Neolithic toolkit. Think of it like a self-sustaining colonization package. And this wasn't just random stuff. It was a carefully selected survival kit for new worlds. It had all the staple crops they'd need, domesticated animals for food, and the core technologies for building shelters and storing food. This kit was the key to their success. It let them set up brand new, thriving communities on almost any island they found. Okay, but having a survival kit is one thing. Actually getting that kit across thousands of kilometers of open ocean, well, that's something else entirely. This part of the story required a technological revolution that made them, without a doubt, the masters of the sea. And I really can't stress this enough. While other ancient people were carefully hugging the coastlines, the Austronesians were building boats capable of true blue water voyaging. I mean, think about it. The journey from the Philippines to the Mariana Islands around 1500 BCE was over 2,500 kilometers. That was very likely the longest open ocean crossing in human history up to that point. It's just incredible. So how did they build these amazing ships? They used this really ingenious method called the lashed lug technique. They'd start with a dugout base, then fit planks edge to edge. But instead of nailing them, they literally sewed them together with ropes made from plant fibers, tying them around these carved nubs or lugs on the inside of the planks. This created a hull that was both super strong and flexible enough to handle the stress of the open ocean, and they did it all without a single metal nail. Now, building a strong hull was only half the battle. To keep from capsizing in those big ocean swells, they came up with two game-changing innovations. First, the outrigger canoe, which has a float attached to one side for stability. And second, the catamaran, which joins two hulls together to create an unbelievably stable platform for carrying people and cargo. These designs are the absolute hallmark of Austronesian genius. And to power these incredible vessels, they invented a sail unlike anything anyone had ever seen, the crab claw sail. This very distinct triangular sail was an aerodynamic marvel. It was so efficient that it allowed their sailors to not just travel with the wind, but to actually sail effectively against it. This gave them the freedom to explore the ocean in pretty much any direction they wanted. And hey, if you have any doubt that this ancient technology could actually work, you just have to look at the hokulea. This is a modern replica of a traditional Polynesian voyaging canoe, built using those same ancient principles. And since the 1970s, it has successfully sailed all over the Pacific, including a trip around the entire world, using only traditional navigation techniques. It is living proof that these ancient designs were more than capable of the epic journeys their ancestors took. So, as these explorers spread out across the ocean, they didn't just leave their DNA behind, they left physical evidence. And for archaeologists, the most important clue is this unique and beautiful style of pottery that acts like an ancient breadcrumb trail, letting us follow their path across the vast Pacific. And this brings us to the Lapita culture. Named after a place in New Caledonia where this pottery was first found, these were the Austronesian people who made that great leap from Southeast Asia out into the remote, uninhabited islands of the Pacific. These are the direct ancestors of today's Polynesians, Micronesians, and many Melanesian peoples. Their most famous artifact by far is this pottery. It's decorated with these incredibly complex geometric patterns, all meticulously stamped on with a tiny, tooth-like tool. But here's the crucial part. These designs, especially some of the stamped circles and faces, look a lot like earlier pottery that's been found in the Philippines. It's a clear link in the chain of migration. The pottery lets us track the absolutely stunning speed of their expansion. Around 1600 BCE, the Lapita culture just suddenly appears in the Bismarck Archipelago, near New Guinea. From there, it's like a wildfire spreading across the ocean. They leapfrog from island to island at a pace that is just staggering, covering nearly 4,000 kilometers in just a few centuries to reach places like Tonga and Samoa. They settled a vast, empty ocean faster than anyone ever thought was possible. So after pausing for about 1,000 years in Western Polynesia, a new wave of exploration began. This was it, the final, most astounding chapter of the Austronesian story, as their descendants, the Polynesians, set out to find and settle the most remote islands on our entire planet. But first, while most were pushing east into the Pacific, one group did the unthinkable. They turned west. In an absolutely incredible journey, these Austronesian sailors crossed the entire Indian Ocean, a voyage of over 6,000 kilometers from Borneo, all the way to the massive island of Madagascar, bringing their culture and language to the shores of Africa. Meanwhile, back in the Pacific, other voyagers were pushing east, straight into the unknown, sailing directly against the powerful trade winds. It was one of the most daring gambles you can imagine, and it led them to discover Rapa Nui, or Easter Island, a tiny speck of land so remote it's often called the most isolated inhabited place on Earth. And their final great push was south, into the colder, stormier seas of the temperate zone. And there they found it, the last major habitable landmass on the planet that had never been touched by humans. They had reached the huge, majestic islands of Aotearoa, New Zealand, and in doing so, they completed humanity's settlement of the globe. And what's really crucial to understand is just how recent all of this was. We're not talking about some distant, unknowable past here. Just look at these dates. We're talking about the last 1,000 years. While castles were being built in medieval Europe, Polynesian wayfinders were still out there, on the open ocean, completing a migration that had begun millennia before, settling the very last frontiers of our planet. So the Austronesian expansion is so much more than just a story of migration. It's a legacy of incredible ingenuity, of resilience, and a profound understanding of the natural world that continues to inspire people to this day. You see, to pull off these voyages, Austronesian navigators developed this incredible system we now call wayfinding. It's an unbelievable mental skill. It required them to memorize the paths of hundreds of stars and to read all the subtle clues of the ocean, the direction of the swells, the flight patterns of birds, even the shape of the clouds. It's a total contrast to how we get around today, relying on satellites and screens. Their system was based not on external tech, but on deep, internalized knowledge of the world around them. And that really leaves us with a final thought. The story of the Austronesians is the ultimate testament to human potential, to our ability to connect with our environment. It makes you wonder, right? In our age of digital dependency, what essential knowledge have we forgotten? And what can we possibly learn from a culture that saw the ocean not as a barrier, but as a highway to the stars?